Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fifth episode of the FPL Wire, powered by Dreamset Go. I'm your host Zofa, and I'm joined as usual by my co-host Late Riser. How did the wildcard go, Ella?
I need to thank my wife and her friends because they planned a weekend getaway. So I was sitting by the pool having a few gins, which helped ease the pain. I got 35 points, and but I actually think it's a write-off week. I don't really think you can draw too many conclusions from the results of what happened this past game week. You can draw conclusions from the games that you saw and some trends. With regards to my team, I got 35 points. DCL as usual. He's been my only hero this game week. Martinez did well. Trent did well for me. The triple city, triple Wolves bombed, but I'm not too worried. I'm confident of a green arrow finally next game week. I think it's due. It has to happen next week. What
I'm sure.
about you?
Bucker? Let's
Yeah,
go with Bucker first. How did you do?
yeah. I mean, things were looking pretty dire for me heading into Monday with no Salah and hardly 30 on the board. But glad I had Emi Martinez and Trent. Both of them did me proud yet again. I mean, Emi Martinez is just the gift that keeps on giving. I ended up on 42, which I'll happily accept, considering that this was supposed to be a week of consolidation for me after having played my wild card, and after a quick start in the first two game weeks, I'll accept it. Particularly considering that most of the people around me didn't really have great weeks as well, so it was kind of the same for everyone.
I mean, we were talking about that prior to the start of the podcast. If you go triple up on two teams such as Wolves and Man City, you are going to be in the wrong end of variance sometimes. So you have to take that on the chin. So in terms of my team, I got 51 points, and four of my defenders accounted for 26 of those. So not wildcarding, I think, was at least at the time a good decision. I would have sold McCarthy, Walker Peters, Ailing, Adams, and they all chipped in this week. So looks like set up well for next week. So, a little word on Dream Set Go. Dream Set Go is a global portal for fans to gain access to sporting events around the world. Accommodation, flight tickets, hospitality, stadium visits, everything can be tailored exactly to your requirements. They also do celebrity experiences, which include masterclasses with your favorite sports celebrity or something as simple as birthday shoutouts. Visit dreamsetgo.co for more. The FPL Wire is a part of the Fantasy Scout Network, and all stats used in this podcast are taken from the FFS members area. Please sign up if you haven't already.
And today's agenda, I'm just going to take you guys through it. Hot topics for today. Werner, everybody's talking about him, what to do with him, should we sell him? And if we're selling him, we are re-looking at the striker options that we need to consider. What to do with Son? There is been some interesting news coming this afternoon just before we started podding. And if you're looking to sell him, what midfielders should you look at? We're going to be talking about penalties, which is affecting everyone's thinking these days. The three teams that we're going to have a closer look at this game week is West Ham, West Brom, and Leeds United. The hot fixtures we're going to be looking at is Aston Villa, Liverpool, United, Spurs, Everton, Brighton, and Leeds, Man City. After that, our standard fare, we'll have captains, three stop stats for the game weeks, differentials, followed by teams and questions.
Yep.
So let's start. Let's start with Chelsea and Timo Werner, and I think no better person than you to kick us off on this one, so.
I mean, should I start? I think I'll come across a bit biased. I want to hear you guys first. I mean, it was just a weekend of surprises everywhere. Man City lost, Wolves lost, Chelsea drew, Man United won. I mean, anything can happen in this league.
Vardy's in the top scorer of the league despite having one shot in the box in open play. So
Yeah.
yeah, weird things are happening in the league.
Yep, yep.
Um, why? Okay,
Why don't you start?
we'll wait to hear your opinion on Chelsea later. We'll have Bucker kicking us off on Chelsea and Bourne. What are you thinking, Bucker?
I mean, this is an interesting one considering that all of us went with Werner in game week one. He was the most popular owned forward when the game opened. Werner has kind of disappointed me. I expected more, having read his stats, that he had the best expected involvement XG um, after Lewandowski in Europe. So I've kind of been let down by him. His numbers in the league aren't that great so far. Apart from that one chance against West Brom, he hasn't really looked himself. I don't really think Lampard has made up his mind on where to play him as well. I mean, he started off as a striker. Now he's playing more on the left. He scored last night, which is a good sign, and the finish showed that that's a finish of someone who has confidence. So that gives me confidence. I think I'm likely to keep him. because I was reading up the odds are really in his favor. Palace is a game. I expect Chelsea to win. I'm not sure they'll score too many goals, but hopefully Werner will be involved. But the Southampton game is the one I think suits Werner, because with his pace in behind, I think even if he's playing on the left, he's going to trouble them. So I think I'm going to keep him.
But
What about you?
do you think he's a good hold if somebody doesn't have, so you have a pretty sorted team in terms of having Calvert-Lewin and Jimenez, who are the strikers to have at this stage. If you didn't have, let's say, Raul Jimenez in your team, would you switch Werner to Jimenez?
Yes, I think I would have done it, because I would have been more tempted to swap. I think Jimenez and Calvert-Lewin for cheaper are better value than Werner at the moment, because at the moment I don't think Werner has that sort of high ceiling to justify his price tag. But because I own him already and I have Jimenez and Calvert-Lewin, I'm not looking to sell him
All
personally.
right. Okay. Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. Lampard's been making some poor decisions with Chelsea so far. I feel like the team lacks creativity because all that happened in the last game was they were relying on Reece James for the crosses, and there was no play happening through the center. And I feel like Jorginho is the one who is at least capable of unlocking that defense with some sort of through ball and anything. And I think Lampard's love affair with Mount might cause Chelsea a little because yeah, he's a really good player. He works hard and everything, but he's not your elite creative player, and he's not your elite number 10, and he's not good on the wings. So I feel like Lampard needs to make some tough calls. Yeah, Mount's been playing well, but you want to progress as a team, right? Chelsea wants to go to the next level, and with Mount, I don't think they'll be able to go to the next level. Uh, uh, I think I don't know whether to trust Lampard or not in terms of when Pulisic and Ziyech are going to be coming, but when Ziyech is going to come into the team, he is going to be the creative force. Because right now they're devoid of any creativity. There's nobody who's capable of playing a decent through ball to Werner when he's making a run behind a defender. So it's all a little bit complex at the moment. That said, I'm leaning towards keeping Werner this week because I feel like Lampard said that they're close, and post the international break, we should see Ziyech and Pulisic at least start or come closer to starting. And outside of that, I feel like the international break is a good reason to save a transfer. It's good to have two transfers after the international break, especially during COVID season, because we know what happened pre-game week 1, and it was a shambles with so many players getting the COVID. So I'm not trusting the times too much. So I think it's a good time to save a transfer. The only person who's really tempting me as a switch right now is Danny Ings. He's got a good fixture straight up against West Ham. But I don't have Mo Salah, as you guys already know. So I don't really know what kind of long-term moves I want to make with my team, and I don't mind giving Werner a go against our favorite defender. Shout out to Jo Danny Ward, because he's not that great, and we have this entire Ward theory where anybody who plays against Ward tends to do well, and if Werner's playing on the left, he should do well against Ward. And I like the Saints fixture as well. Not as much as I did before this game week because Ralph Hasenhuttl mentioned in his press conference that they worked on having a deeper line. They don't want to have a high line, and they're focusing on defending first. So the Saints fixture, which might look very appealing, might not be as appealing because Ralph is learning. He's not being your stubborn manager. Uh, but if you have an obvious move like a switch to Jimenez to make, I'm all for it because we've seen Fulham play. They have Dennis Odoi as their center defender. What the move? So if you have such an obvious move, go for it. But if you already have an Jimenez in place, and if you're not convinced in terms of who you want to get, maybe hold. I'm also really thinking about Aguero and Jesus, and I really like the look of Harry Kane as well because he's looked fabulous so far. So I don't know which direction I want to go with my striker. So at the moment, I'm giving Werner another game, but this could change by Saturday. Now your turn, Zoff. Kick us off.
Yep. See, my problem primarily is I don't know where Werner is going to play right now. Is he going to play as a striker? Is he going to play on the left wing? And that's a lot of uncertainty for a 9.5, 9.4 million assets. I don't even think Lamps knows where he wants to play him. See, the thing is now what I noticed yesterday with Werner, when he plays on the wing, he naturally has a very high work rate. He tracks back a lot. I posted his heat map on Twitter, and you can see he's all over the places. He has touches in the opposition box defending, which is what you want from a manager, but not what you want from an FPL asset as a striker. Now, his stats aren't really that bad. He's got 8 shots in the box across the 3 matches. with one of which was largely played with 10 men. It's not bad. But his non penalty XG is only 0.83, which is lower than Mitrovic at 0.89. So that says a lot. I mean, Palace will set up with a super deep defensive line. He's not really going to get much space to run in behind. The Joel Ward theory, I buy into it to a certain extent, but when Joel Ward is just going to be defending and just, another winger is also going to be doubling up, I don't know how much I'd read into that. Saints also played a much deeper defensive line against Burnley, so I don't think Ralph is going to be as naive as before. Then after that we play Burnley, who are also going to play with a deep line. So I've actually sold Warner. I think it's just too much right now, too much investment in Chelsea with the uncertainty of the positions, the players, and I've got Kai in. So I right now what with the current positions, the way if Warner actually goes to the wing, Kai plays at 10. I think Kai is actually going to get closer to the goal than Timo.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I agree with the double Chelsea at this stage seems like too much.
yeah, I mean for me
Yeah.
it feels like double Chelsea plus the emotional investment. Also, it just feels there's too much at stake. It's going to be the first game this game week. I didn't want it to like if Werner scores, it's not like I'm going to go be like, oh, why I still sold him. I'm going to be happy as a fan.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
for me, it's like it's sort of an emotional hedge.
Let's talk a little bit about Lampard. What's your read of him? Do you rate him as a manager? What's your read of Lampard? Because there's a lot of debate in terms of whether Lampard can sustain being at Chelsea. What are your thoughts as a Chelsea fan there?
See, that's an interesting question. Now, what happened last year? Nobody had really any expectations of Lampard. Even when we lost 4-0 at Old Trafford, nobody jumped on Lampard as a fraud or a failure because he had to play the youth. The next few games when the young players did well, you had fans of other teams liking Chelsea. So it was almost like you had nothing to lose. It was a free hit. Now, like with all the investment, now there's a lot of fruit around. People want Chelsea to fail after seeing all the big money signings. So there's pressure from day one. And I think this is the first time that Lamps really has had to deal with the pressure as a manager. So I think this really shows. I think he's. I don't want to say he looked out of his depth. It's too early to say that. A lot of people are already crucifying him. But it remains to be seen how he can slot all these guys in.
Yeah, and it's not easy, especially when he has two big players not fit at the moment. He doesn't have an ideal team. It will happen. I think we
Yeah,
just
and you
need to
made
be
a
little
good point
patient.
there about the player like Jorginho to play the through ball. I think he needs a player like Fabregas. Like I
Exactly.
think Ziyech is probably the closest we are going to get to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't see where the creativity is coming from that team at the moment. I think that's the key issue.
That's
I
the
think
key
once
issue, absolutely.
the Ziyech and Pulisic they start playing together in this team, I think they're gonna gel, and maybe that's when we're gonna see the best of Chelsea.
Yeah, I mean they overloaded process from Reece James' side. That's where Ziyech is going to place, and his delivery is definitely going to be better than Reece James. So yeah, I think that's our say on Chelsea and Werner, and we'll move to if at all people are looking to switch Werner, who are the good striker options? And I'm going to start taking a few names, and it'd be nice to have your thoughts on those players. We'll start with the mid price bracket. Uh, Jimenez seems like the most obvious pick on paper to me, given the fixtures. I wouldn't worry too much about what we saw in the last game. I feel like Wolves will figure it out. And fair play to West Ham. I think they've looked a lot better than people have presumed. What are you guys' thoughts on Jimenez?
Bakar, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Jimenez, I mean, like you said, LR, I won't, read too much into what happened against West Ham. I hope that was a freakish game, because that's been the tone of this weekend. Odd results everywhere. But when you look at his fixtures, Fulham, Leeds, Palace, Newcastle, in the next four, I just can't see Jimenez not doing well, and with the amount of penalties being given as well. I mean, he's a penalty taker, so that's an added incentive. He's the main man. And hopefully, if Portens is back, he's going to get plenty of opportunities in the coming weeks. I think he's a far better player than Neto, and I think he's integral to the way they play. Because I remember even during post restart when Wolves were struggling, as soon as Podence started playing and starting, they looked a completely different team, and they started sort of playing more freely. So I think he makes a huge difference to this Wolves team, especially now that Jota isn't there. So I think that him being back would be a huge plus for Jimenez.
And anything to add, Zoff, on that?
Yep. So I did a lot of research on strikers. My scout article is coming out, I think, tomorrow. So I had a detailed stats dive into all of them. So I'll take a more statistical approach towards this section. So Jimenez is ranked fifth for shots in the box. That's 9. And he comes in fifth for non-penalty XG, 1.31 amongst forwards. So what really stood out to me that over the 3 games, Jimenez has created just one chance, which is very unusual for Jimenez. He's usually amongst the most creative forwards in the league. His expected goal involvement, he's ranked just 12th. So, I mean, there is a mitigating factor to that they played Man City and they were totally off against West Ham, but there is some concern that these underlying numbers are not great. Jimenez is somebody who's always had very strong underlying numbers.
Yeah, I feel like that's a case of lesser data available to us. Because
Precisely.
if you saw the City game, Podence was making the runs behind the defense, and Jimenez was the guy playing balls to him. So I think we'll see more of that in the next few
Yep.
game weeks as well. Let's move on to the next option, Ings. He's the one I'm considering to switch Werner to, if at all. It's between Richarlison and Ings for me because I already own Calvert-Lewin and Jimenez. And he's got a great fixture straight up, which is the West Brom fixture. But I'm a little worried about the games after that. He plays Chelsea, Everton, and Aston Villa. Chelsea now have a keeper, so they're a seemingly decent defense, and I don't expect them to make the same errors that they did last week. I mean, Thiago Silva, I think it was an anomaly, just a free game week like what happened uh, in all the games last weekend. So yeah, I'm a little worried about the fixtures, and I don't know which direction I want to go with forwards. And I think it's really close between Ings and Richarlison now that Richarlison has penalties, because the Saints' offensive numbers haven't really been that great. In Project Restart, they were in the top 5 for shots in the box and all the other relevant stats. That team is now Everton. So I'm wondering in terms of what to do in terms of Ings and Richarlison. And we know that Ings is the better finisher and the better player, but Richarlison is going to get a higher volume of chances, is what I'm presuming. So I think it's a close call between the two. What are your thoughts on this one, Zoff?
Again, now Che Adams actually beats Ings for non-penalty XG, 1.28 to 0.79. But Ings, as we know, his finishing ability is on another planet. In fact, 12 strikers have a higher non-penalty XG than Ings, but only 2, that is Vardy and DCL, have scored more goals. So it's very difficult statistically to analyze Ings. What did actually concern me a little bit is that against Burnley, Saints really had just one shot on target, which we know the state of the Burnley defense. They really should have had more. So what he's done now, Hassan Hutley is focusing on defense after the first few games. So I do wonder whether the shot volume will take a dip.
Exactly, because they're going to have a defense first approach. If they're going to have that defense first approach, the attack volume will get compromised. And what are your thoughts on the Ings versus Richarlison versus Calvert-Lewin debate?
I'll touch upon Calvert-Lewin later, have some good stats for him, but I would probably just go with DCL out of all those
Alright.
three still.
What are your thoughts on these three strikers, Pakar?
Yeah, I think personally Calvert-Lewin at the moment is head and shoulders above most of the strikers in the league, particularly given his price range. I mean, he's top for shots in the box for forwards, big chances of all players in the league. So he's getting way too many chances for me to overlook him. Everton at the minute are joint second best for big chances as well, and XG. So I mean, things are looking really good for Everton, and I can see why you'd want Richarlison. I mean, I was looking at the stats, and Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin more or less have the same shots inside the box, but because of the fact that Calvert-Lewin is more of a poacher, he gets the better big chances. So he has 5 big chances to Richarlison's 2. But with the amount of penalties given these days, I mean, Richarlison is a legit option now. Ings is another one. Ings is someone who always defies the stats. He's just a ridiculous finisher. He's absolutely brilliant. I personally am not considering Ings for my team, but I think he's going to do well against West Brom. But I absolutely agree with you. I don't think his fixtures in the next 3 after West Brom are that great. Chelsea away, I think, will be tough. I rate Chelsea at home. Their defense is under Lampard has been decent, and now they have a keeper. So I'm hoping they won't concede too many. And then they have Everton, who've looked solid as well. They're in the top 3 for least big chances conceded. So even that won't be an easy fixture for Saints. And then they have Villa away, and Villa have looked solid as well.
Yep.
So I mean, I'm not exactly sure about Ings as well.
If you were to pick between Richarlison and Ings on your wildcard team today, who do you pick?
I would probably go with Richarlison.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm inclining towards as well.
But would you
Zoff
double
had a
up?
few.
But would you double up with DCL?
I'm considering the double up. I own DCL at the moment, and if I am to sell Werner, Richarlison, Ings are the kind of 2 players I'm considering in the mid-price bracket. And I'm thinking Richarlison could be a better pick. I'm not entirely sure about this, so maybe I'll just wait
Yeah.
for a single game week. And DCL, I mean, a lot of people are asking in terms of what to do between DCL and Richarlison. Despite Richarlison having penalties, I still think DCL is the better pick because Ames Rodriguez is the creative force, and what's happening is he's playing a lot of through balls through both the wing backs, and they're cutting back. And Richarlison has been instructed by Ancelotti that you look at the penalty box and there's a 5 meter radar. You stay between that radius and don't move outside. And given those instructions, he's always going to get the big chances. Outside of that, I think he's an underrated threat on set pieces. His movement is really good when he's approaching the box as well. So I like DCL as a pick over Richarlison, but between Ings and Richarlison, I'm not sure at the moment. I'm slightly leaning towards Richarlison, so that's where I'm.
You
You
know the
had some.
thing. You know the thing is that I think Everton might even struggle against Brighton this week. Their fixture, I think, is Brighton is a deceptively good fixture on paper, but I'm not sure. Brighton have looked really good defensively.
Very good
They aren't
stats.
conceding too many.
They're a
Uh,
good team. They're a good team. They
exactly.
they
I mean,
outplayed United completely.
they've only conceded two big chances from open play this season, and they've already played United and Chelsea. So that makes me wonder that Everton might have a tough time against Brighton,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
and
an
then they have
interesting.
Liverpool next week. So I mean that would be my concern if I was considering to double up on Everton attack. But their numbers look great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is fair. I think the next two fixtures are difficult. Uh, uh, Zoff had a few numbers on both the
Yep. So
strikers.
the graph we have up over here lists strikers by my preferred. So before we jump into that, what is your preferred metric for judging strikers? Is it shots in the box, shots on target, big chances? What do you guys look at?
Shots in the box and big chances.
Bakar?
That's
For
what.
big chances always for me. I
Okay.
prefer big chances.
So
Yeah.
for me, it's shots inside the box. That's something I always look at. Ultimately, I don't care if you're taking speculative shots. I want the shots to be from where they can be the most dangerous. So Calvert-Lewin is actually top with 12, and Richarlison is second with 11. So now, what is also interesting is that Calvert-Lewin tops the table for non-penalty xG 3.51. Now Richarlison has 2.24 xG compared to DCS 3.51 even after the penalty, which counts for 0.7. That just shows you how much more of a goal threat
Yeah,
DCL is. So, and I like that you mentioned that you're considering the double up, because I want to talk about basket wasting. I think you guys are familiar with the concept. We
yeah,
discuss it in a group a lot. That
yeah.
if like you don't want to double up or triple up on a team just to spread the risk, but what we also discussed is basket wasting. Now we don't talk about not about putting all your eggs in the same basket, but if that is the best basket available, why not?
Exactly, exactly. I mean, let's say people are making a choice with they already own Salah at the moment, and they're making a choice between Mane and Sterling. Liverpool look the better team in attack right now, and that's why you go for a Mane because they look the better team in attack, and Mane is getting the higher proportion of the chances. So that's what you base your uh, decision on. Don't really need to think about whether you own one or two players already from that team. I mean, some of the most amazing game weeks that I've had in FPL have been when I've had a few successful double ups and triple ups. And then when you're banking on a good team, it's fine. You shouldn't worry about
Yeah,
it too
something
much.
Magnus Carlsen also did with good effect last year. Whenever there was a good fixture and he doubled up on the attack rather than get just one.
I mean, it's always nice to look at assets in isolation rather than considering whether you own someone else from that team as well. Because if you look at them in isolation, I mean, that's what helps you make a rational decision.
I mean, yeah, Richarlison is not going to score less because he knows that, oh, you have DCL in your team.
Yeah,
Precisely.
precisely. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the top bracket strikers. And one I'm really interested in, might move for next week, is Harry Kane, best midfielder in the league right now. What I actually think Spurs are a little underrated, and Mourinho is getting a little grief for no reason in terms of what Spurs are doing. I think they're sorting out their midfield. I think Hoberg, Winks, and Lo Celso as a midfield three is working. And I feel like both Kane and Son are developing an incredibly good partnership. They played each other for years. They both look really sharp. I haven't seen Kane look this sharp for a long time, and that's why I'm interested in him again. So I want to see how they play against United. Also, I get the feeling that once Bale is fit and he has both his wing backs in place, I have a feeling that he'll move to a 3-5-2 formation, which will see Son and Kane play up top as the sole strikers. Which
Or
makes
Bale.
Uh,
Or even
oh
Bale
yeah,
could be up top with Kane.
yeah, it could be 3-4-3 or 3-5-2. So it interests me in their picks, and there's a lot more quality in the team, and they're creating a substantial amount of chances. I think they're in the top five in the league for attacking statistics, so shouldn't be overlooked. Spurs are changing what's happening there. Uh, One of the reasons I'm waiting also is to see whether my favorite boy Sergio Aguero is going to be fit next game week. Outside of that, Vardy, I don't think he's a good pick. I don't think you should go there, despite him being the top scorer in the league so far. And then there's Tony Marshall. I feel like we're still getting into top gear. We're in second or third gear, just like Man City, and we're only going to get better game on game. So he's not a bad pick. He's a decent hold. We saw Bruno. He came through this game week with a goal and an assist. Jammy, I know, but that happened. So out of the premium brackets, Kane is the one I'm most interested and waiting to see if the city strikers are fit, and the other two are a wait and watch for now. What do you guys think about the top bracket?
So I'll just share some numbers relating to Kane. Now he's the most creative forward in the league with 8 attempted assists. He also leads the way for big chances created. That's 5. No other forward has in fact created more than one. He's joint top with Calvert-Lewin for shots on target, and he comes in third for non-penalty xG. With just I think Lacazette is only 0.01 ahead, so you could even say second. And only DCL and Vardy are beating him for expected goal involvement. And keep in mind, Kane hasn't taken a penalty yet. And these are vintage numbers. These are numbers we saw from Kane a few years ago. So you're definitely on the right track that he is getting back to his best.
And
I,
they've got a nice run of fixtures, of course. I mean, I think the United game is also a good game considering the way our defense is playing nowadays. So yeah, he's got a nice run of fixtures,
Nice
worth
run of fixtures,
considering.
absolutely. So I don't have much to say about Jesus or Marshall, but Vardy, I love how his numbers totally look shit every time. So he scored with 5 of his 6 shots in the box, 4 of which were penalties. His non-penalty xG is just 0.45 compared to his xG of 3.6, which is the highest amongst all forwards.
All penalties. I mean, I don't think they're going to face opponents that are going to brain fart the way Walker and Mendy did
Yeah.
this week. What are your thoughts on the premium strikers, Bakar?
Yeah, I tweeted this regarding Kane yesterday as well. That I mean, no player has the better expected goal involvement from open play than him in the first 3 game weeks. And as like Zofar mentioned, this is even more pertinent considering that he hasn't, won a penalty yet, and you add a couple of penalty goals to his FPL score, and everyone will be talking about him like everyone's talking about Vardy. Uh, I'm not sure about Son. As soon as Son comes back, I think they'll look really good again, because I watched the game against Newcastle, and they were a different team in the first half, and when Son went off, they sort of struggled to break Newcastle down. So Kane was looking much better with Son in the team. As soon as Son comes back, I think Kane is going to be a very good option, even at a premium price. I mean, the fixtures after this week are very good. West Ham, Burnley, Brighton, West Brom. I mean, those are premium fixtures for a
The
forward.
fixture this game week is a good fixture too. We have Lindelof in defense.
So
Not
yeah,
very
I
happy
mean,
about
I,
that.
I really like the look of Kane.
All right, and what about the other strikers? Anyone that interests you? Not
Uh,
really.
n- Not really. I like yourself. I'm gonna wait on Aguero when he comes back. He's gonna be someone I take into consideration.
And a few people are looking to downgrade Warner so that they can buy another premium midfielder. Anyone in the cheap striker bracket that interests you right now, Bakar?
I mean, there's in the cheap bracket, there's Mope, who stands out, I think, but I don't think I would downgrade Werner to him this week. I think Mope he's looking really good, but I would go there after two weeks time once the fixtures get better for Brighton. I think Everton away, I just told they're in the top three for least big chances conceded, and then next week Palace away is always a tough fixture. It's a rivalry. I don't think there will be too many goals in that one. If I was considering Mope, I would go there after game week 6 when he has West Brom at home,
No,
and that's
no,
pretty
no other cheap strikers you want to go for
You were
that you
quite
like?
passionate about getting Wood last time.
much. Mitrovic is, I mean, I don't really rate him because his sort of big chances have kind of declined. I watched Fulham against Villa and against um, Leeds, and even in the first half, they struggled. I don't really rate Mitrovic as a pick either. So there's not much in the cheap bracket actually. I mean, Mope is the only one I would consider. Che Adams is someone I still like because he's still posting numbers, and being the statistical nerd I am, I still believe in him, and I still think he's going to come good at some point. But I won't sell Werner for him right now. I mean, it's better to keep Werner than to buy these guys.
I was talking to Zoff, and he's considering getting in Patrick Bamford after the international break. What are your thoughts there, Zoff?
I mean, Bamford is somebody I've monitored when he was at Chelsea. We always thought he had potential. I think his career sort of stagnated after he went to Middlesbrough, and I think now he's probably feeling that he has the opportunity to show the world what he can do. So I'm expecting an upturn in performance from what we saw in the championship. He's actually showing a clinical side to his game, which he's not been known for. He's taken only 6 shots in the box and he scored 3 goals. So I'm asking myself whether this is sustainable. That's my primary concern with Bamford.
Yeah, he sort of reminds me of like Wood Premium who plays in a better team because he's actually pretty physical as well. He tends to win a lot of battles against
He's
your
improved
hefty.
that aspect of his game.
He's bulked up and he's a decent threat from crosses against strong centre back. So I quite like that little addition that he's made to his game, and he's got a deft touch in terms of he's got some quality when he's playing on the ball. So yeah, he's somebody who's interesting me as well because Leeds are going to get a decent volume of chances. They're going to constantly attack, and if you get a decent chunk of that pie, you're going to be happy. I have a few thoughts on Mope because a few people have been interested in him. I just feel like if you're going Brighton attack, I feel like Trossard is the better option because what happens when we're watching Brighton play is Mope is sort of like playing in the Firmino role where he's linking up the play, and Connolly is the guy who's playing the traditional nine, who's running forward, and Trossard as well. He's making runs as the inside forward, moving inside the box. And I don't really rate Mope as a finisher as well. He's looked good for most part of last season as well, where he takes a few shots from just around the D, but never really converts them because he's not a good finisher. So I'd say just tread with caution if you're going for a pick like Mope. In the cheap bracket, the player that I like the most is Antonio. I know that they have tough fixtures in the next 4 game weeks, but uh, post restart, he was top 2 for all the relevant stats that you look at when you're looking for strikers. And despite the tough fixtures, he's top 5 right now and he's really good. I mean, he's able to bully the likes of Billy Bowley and Connor Cody, which isn't an easy task. And I mean, I think they beat the heavy side of relief once they got done dealing with Antonio. So I think he's good. And I think despite the fixtures, he's going to have a steady stream of points. And he's fallen now to 6.4 or 6.3. So, I mean, if at all you want to make a long term move for this position, I don't mind just keeping him and forgetting him for a long, long time because he'll continue to trickle through.
Yep. So now you see over here on the table, he's 2 for non-penalty XG, which is pretty high up. I think that's in the top 5. He has been unlucky, but there is a caveat here from the eye test. What I've noticed is he's playing a very different role to a traditional striker. He's bringing Souček and Bowen into play. He's dropping deep, holding up the ball, and he's really enabling Souček to get those surging forward runs. So
Agreed.
the pricing is really good, but I don't know the fixtures, etc. I don't really think I would personally go Antonio yet. Somebody is on my radar for after another 2-3 weeks.
Yeah,
Fair,
same here.
fair play. Fair play. Let's move on to Son and Son replacements. I mean, we received a new piece of information just this afternoon. You thought Jose is playing mind games there, so what are you thinking?
I mean, if the fixture wasn't United or something simple, I would have probably said that it's true. But with this United fixture, this is what Jose lives for. I think that he loves nothing more than to give United fans, and especially Solskjaer, been having this whole banter in the media. So I really can't tell. The tricky thing now is if he actually plays Son in that game, then definitely Korea are going to pick him for the international break. I'm not sure if Korea are playing or not, but that's a risk always. And he's already made comments about that my players need to be protected by the international managers, etc., etc. So it'd be a big risk.
And but if you had Son, would you hold him or
I would definitely hold him
would you
because the
switch?
fixture run is great. I think you can probably risk playing a cheaper defender this week as a sub on. Like I mean, somebody like let's see if you have an Ailing also on your bench. He's not a bad play against Man City. He could really get something an attacking potential. So I would definitely hold him because if he's going to be back for international break, he's a great option for the run of fixtures.
Fair, I agree. What about you, Bakar? If you had Son, you'd hold him?
That's a tough one. When I read the news that he had an hamstring injury, that I thought he'd be ruled out for a few weeks. But judging from what I've read today, that he might be even back for the United game. I mean, I don't think it makes too much sense to sell him. I mean,
And
the
plus, he
only
actually looks like the best pick in the price bracket right now.
yeah, he
Quite.
looked great. I mean, he hit the post twice against Newcastle. He was unlucky not to have scored there. Could have easily had an assist as well. So I mean, with the fixtures coming up, if he's fit after the international break, it makes little sense to get rid. But I mean, if you're looking to sell, then I'd probably go to Mahrez. I think Mahrez is someone I really like, particularly considering the fact that the strikers are injured now at Man City. So there's a good chance that he's going to play now, and he scored and assisted in the first game week as well. So I mean, it's always sort of torturous and futile second guessing Pep, but I would think that he'd sort of keep his place, and he's the only one in that bracket I can see coming, close to matching Son for explosiveness.
There's
Yeah, fair
Rashford.
play.
I think Rashford probably above him. That's probably the only other one I would say you could have a look at. I think 0.5 more.
Yeah, I actually own Rashford myself, and I think I fancy him this week. But then after that, his fixtures, I'm not really sure. Newcastle away is not a fixture I think United will do too well in. I think United will probably struggle there. And then there's Chelsea and Arsenal.
To
I'm not sure
Newcastle
about that
away.
either.
I mean,
No, no, we're not going to struggle there. That's the kind of league
come
we're going to
on.
be.
I mean, if
Yeah.
you look at Newcastle away as a difficult fixture, I mean, not much more.
I don't know. United have a habit of watching things up in these kind of games.
No, no, not before. That was before Bruno Fernandes arrived. Now we have two
Yeah,
to become.
I think you.
Jesse Lingard doesn't play in our team anymore.
After seeing how he set up against Spurs, I realized Steve Bruce against big teams is always going to revert to type.
No, the thing is, I haven't really been impressed with United too much either. So I'm not willing to trust them too much. Even though I own Rashford, I'm going to keep him. But like, if I was buying someone for Son, I wouldn't be too confident on
That's a good point.
Rashford.
You know who I really like at the Sun replacement? I know LR likes him. Harvey Barnes.
Gone Barnes always been a big fan.
Yep.
I think if I were to replace Son, I don't think replacing him is a good position because is a good option because he's by far the best option in the 9 million ish bracket. And one thing that we've learned now is that Son is not going to be hogging the touchline. That's something we were worried about big time. And we've seen him play a lot more central. He's playing a lot closer to goal, almost sort of as an ancillary support striker. Actually, Kane is a support striker, and Son is making the runs in the field. So good pick. Hold on to him because I think he's going to play after the international break. But like Zoff mentioned, if you were to sell Son, the guys who I like are actually about 2 or 3 million cheaper to Zone. I like Barnes. I like Zaha. I like
James.
Trossard. I like Trossard a lot in that 6 million price bracket.
I mean, even Foden, if he gets rested tonight in the cup, he looks safe for the next few. He's
But
someone I'm
but
looking
Foden
at
is
it.
again like once the strikers are back after the international break, it's a concern again. Let's touch upon James Rodriguez. I think he's been bandwagoned. I think he's the most popular midfield transfer. That's somewhere most of the Sun traffic is going. But I'm conflicted upon his viability as an FPL option. Even though I own him, I'm unimpressed. I mean, as not as a
Yeah.
player, obviously. As a player, he's fantastic. But for FPL, I don't know.
Yeah, he's sort of like Madison was at Vardy. Great player,
No,
makes the
no,
team a
no, no.
lot better, but the points are going to be coming to Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin. That's my read
Yeah,
of that
I agree with
entire
that.
deal.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
he's an elite player, and you can see that he makes them tick. And even in the first goal that Calvert-Lewin scored, I mean, if it wasn't for Hammers's pass to Coleman, that goal would never have happened.
Yeah.
So he makes them tick. But the thing is, whether he's an FPL as a reliable FPL asset. When I picked him, I was of the opinion that he might have penalties. So I mean,
Yeah.
that would have sort of swayed my decision. But without penalties, I'm not too sure about him. He's still second for chances created of all midfielders in the league, and second for big chances created as well. So I mean, his numbers are still pretty good for creativity, but the goal threat, which I ideally want from my players, isn't there. So I'm a bit
Yeah,
conflicted as well. I mean, I absolutely agree with you when you say that the points are going to come from Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin. I agree that those are the ones.
yeah, exactly. And also, I think in the 7 million-ish price bracket in midfield, there are better options that are sprung up, and some options even cheaper, like Trossard. Another one that actually is quite interesting, and he looked really good against Fulham, but we need to tread carefully against judging when we come to judging a team against Fulham. It's Jack Grealish. And one thing that just interested me is Dean Smith spoke a lot about Jack, them working in the training ground, about Jack Grealish making runs beyond the defense. So they sort of want to add creativity in that team, and they want Jack Grealish to become more of an inside forward rather than him, hogging the wing. And Villa's got a decent amount of fixtures for the midterm, so he's somebody who's interesting in that price bracket as well.
Yes, he's playing really advanced. I mean, he's
Yeah.
making. I watched the game against Fulham, and you look at the first goal he scored. Last season, he wasn't exactly getting into these kind of positions. I mean, he was 1-on-1 with the keeper. You don't exactly associate Grealish with those kind of goals. Post restart, he was playing in a deep lying playmaker's role. So um, it's nice to see him play in as part of the front three, and they've added a lot of creativity to their team with their signings, with Traore coming in, there's Barkley coming in. They've also added Watkins as the forward. So Villa look good. So I mean, when the fixtures turn for Villa after like game week 8 or 9, Grealish is going to be a really good option.
So let's put you guys on the spot now. So if at all you were looking for a midfielder right now, the top asset you target right now is Zoff.
Harvey Barnes.
What about you, Akar?
Uh, Mahrez, I think.
Mahrez. I'd go with Harvey Barnes or Trossard. Those are the two that I like. Just a little a note I want to add on Mahrez is that I won't be surprised if Aguero is going to be fit or Jesus is going to be fit to play after the international break. They're going to not play a game this week, and then you have 2 weeks. So we don't know what's going to happen. So if somebody is picking Mahrez, I think he's a fabulous pick. You just need to keep in mind that there are going to be a few games where he's not going to play. And don't really think about not having a striker yet, because that might change very soon. In fact, in by the time the next game week is in front of us. So just this, I just thought I'd add a little note there. All right, let's move to the topic that has been frustrating a lot of players all around the FPL ecosystem, which is penalties. What is your thinking around penalties? Has that changed your perception in terms of what you're going to do when picking your players? What's happening there? Bakar, why don't you start?
I mean, this discussion has really sort of been uh, it's kind of doing the rounds this week, because it's we can see a ridiculous amount of penalties being awarded these days for primarily due to the handball rule. But apparently, reports are coming in that the referees will be more lenient from this weekend onwards towards the handball rule. Um, when I'm buying my assets, I look at all kinds of stats. Personally, there are players like Calvert Lewin who are not on penalties, and I have no problems having them in my team. Or as I suggested, Mahrez earlier as a pick as well. He's 8.5 as well, and he's not on penalties either. That doesn't mean I don't consider him as a pick. Yes, penalties are always going to be an added advantage or benefit of a player that I own, but it's not that I basically will refuse to own non-penalty takers. That's the way I look at it. I'm even willing to pay the premium for players like Sterling, who I know won't be on penalties, but they're going to get so many amount of big chances that that doesn't necessarily make them a bad pick.
What is your thinking there, Zoff?
It's difficult to say because I think there might have been a bit of an overreaction as to what's happened in the past few weeks. I don't think that trend will continue. From what we've seen, the whole thing about leniency and all that stuff. But it seems to me they've made it now more open to interpretation, which is also a dangerous thing in itself. So when things are
Yeah.
not black and white. So I really don't know where this will go. But I mean, obviously, when you're in doubt, pick the penalty taker. But see, when it comes to like DCL versus Richarlison, I'll still pick DCL. I'm not going to
Fair.
pick Richarlison just because he's on penalties. I'm not hard. I just can't bring myself to do that.
Fair enough. I mean, what I'm doing in terms of realigning my thinking is so just the statistics are that we had 8 pens in the first 30 games last season. We've got 20 pens in 26 games so far. 6 of them are through handball. So it's these 6 pens that are the incremental ones. And what's happened is, in the Serie A and the La Liga, we've seen penalties around 20, 30 more penalties than we've seen in the Premier League because of this handball rule. And what FIFA has told the Premier League is that you need to have the same standards for all leagues. So you need to uh, implement this interpretation of the handball rule. Now, the referees went crazy in terms of what happened this game week, but I think it's going to be toning down a little. But you don't need to factor in that penalties is going to be a more important factor than usual. So what I'm thinking of doing is essentially when I'm thinking of decisions, I'm just mentally trying to tell myself, just add 10%, 15% weightage
Yeah.
to the penalties in your thinking when you're making decisions, because it's an important factor. And I went through the list of teams and penalty takers. I mean, most of your penalty takers are good picks in their own rights. So I feel like it's a nice tiebreaker to have if you're considering player A versus player B, like Mo versus Mane or KDB versus Raz. And if it's really close, just let penalties decide, and they should be a factor that you need to weigh more than you usually do. That's the only.
Like at KDB versus Sterling, for example, I know you've always been a Sterling fanboy, but if you had to pick one, for example, would you pick KDB this season?
Yep, yep, I would.
That's a good example, I think.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You just need to add a little more weightage. You need to realign your thinking. So yeah.
Yep. Shall
All
we?
right, let's move to the teams. We'll start with the one team that has been impressing me a fair bit, West Ham. Anybody want to start
Yeah,
with
I'll
West
kick
Ham?
them off. We have the table up over here. I would have never guessed when I saw these numbers pop out. I almost fell off my chair. West Ham are actually second for shots across the league. I would have never guessed that after 3 games, especially when you look at their fixture list. It's quite strange. And also now we can have a look at some of their players. The players are posting impressive numbers as well in terms of shots. We saw earlier Suchek, for example. Suchek, you see, he's fourth for shots in the box amongst midfielders, and he's a 5.0 mid. I mean, even if you get a goal every 3 games, that's a good return. So there's definitely a lot of options there. But where do you think this additional upturn in creativity, this upturn in attack, what is the source of it? Where do you
No,
think it's coming from?
it happened last season as well. So I think Moyes is everybody's favorite meme guy, but I think he's dishing out his own bit of trolling on everybody else because he's made a few tough decisions. He's benching guys like Felipe Anderson, Seb Haller, all these expensive guys who were supposed to make West Ham, and he's sort of being Antonio Conte like, where he's fitting the right players for the right position and making them work. And what's really happened, I was reading a couple of tweets from Luke on Twitter, FPL Irons. He's a West Ham fan, and what he's saying is that essentially they had bad wing backs. So now when they have three at the back, there's much more stability in defense, and the wing backs actually have decent delivery. And what is happening is Antonio is doing a lot of bullying around the centre backs that Wolves that West Ham are playing against. And what is happening is because he's winning the ball and his hold up play is so good, uh, Rice is being the shield in front of a three-man defense, and that gives the likes of Suchek and Bowen freedom. Bowen isn't really a winger; he's an inside forward who's cutting in the middle. He doesn't have too much pace. Suchek doesn't have too much pace. So they're holding the ball, and these guys are making runs beyond Antonio when he's holding up the ball, and that's leading to West Ham creating a high volume of chances. I think all three in the front three, Suchek, Bowen, and Antonio, are good picks in their own right. I mean, when the fixtures turn for West Ham, I'm definitely going to be getting Antonio because I think he's a great pick at that price. And I like Suchek at 5 million as well because he's going to get a high volume of chances. The stats that you showed us give us that bit of proof that we need. And we also saw a very interesting and impressive game from uh, Ricky Masuaku Jarrett, if fans of ballers will know about this. He has a good delivery on him. He showcased that in the last game and could be interesting as if West Ham stick to this formation. Anything to add to this, Bucker?
Yeah, I'll take a statistical approach while answering this section. I've personally been really impressed with West Ham as well. Their fixtures have been really tough, but despite that, I think they've come out of those with really good numbers. Um, so when I look at the numbers, only two teams have conceded fewer big chances than them defensively. So that tells me that they've done particularly well considering the opposition they've faced. They've already played Wolves and Arsenal in the last two. I mean, on the flip side of the coin, they seem to be doing really well on the other side of the field as well. Antonio has been unlucky just to have scored once from three big chances this season. Suchek looks like a born again prime Fellaini, and he's great value at 5 million. Only Antonio has had more shots inside the box and big chances than Suchek in the entire West Ham team. Personally, I'm not considering their assets right now with their fixtures for the next 4 weeks. But I've kept an eye on their numbers, and they tell me that good things are in store for them once Liverpool and Man City are out of the way by game week 8. So that's when I'll go there.
Yeah, I mean, Moyes was everybody's favorite to get to be the first manager to be sacked. I think he's just proving a few wrong. Let's go to our next team, West Brom. Parker, why don't you start with this team?
Yeah, so I get questioned a lot about West Brom, particularly these days, because their fixtures are kind of improving, and a lot of people are actually asking if Ghana, Pereira, or even Robinson, given the fact that he scored twice against Chelsea, they might be worth some investment. Uh, Personally, the answer for me is simple. It's no. As of now, West Ham are ranked bottom in both the defensive and the attacking charts. You look at all the relevant stats.
West Brom, just to correct our
Yeah, yeah,
listeners. Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
You look at all the relevant stats. For attack, they've created the least amount of big chances. They've had the least amount of shots inside the box. Worst XG attacking wise. So I mean, there's not much to report there. I don't really think I'd go towards Robinson or Pereira, even despite the fact that they've done reasonably well over the past couple of weeks. Um, Defensively, they've been a shambles as well. I mean, conceding the most amount of big chances, shots inside the box there as well, worst expected goals conceded. So, I mean, the stats are absolutely shocking and abysmal. So there's nothing much to say there. I mean, you can see the schoolboy errors they made against Chelsea. I mean, that tells me that it'll be a miracle to see them stay up. I mean, if they can't hold a 3-0 lead in the Premier League, then I mean, I really think they'll struggle.
What are your thoughts of? You saw the game, you saw the
Yep.
team play against your own. Anything to add here?
I mean, in terms of defense, I really wouldn't go anywhere near with. But strangely enough, in the table we have over here, guess who's highest for XGI?
I saw that table.
Oh, you already seen
Bo-
it, so that doesn't
Yeah,
matter. Yeah, it's Furlong.
yeah,
Furlong's
yeah.
all the way up there, who's incidentally a defender. He gets forward a lot. Then you have Diangana at 0.42 and Pereira at 0.37. I mean, the numbers are really, really low. But if you're looking for an enabler for fixture wise, they're not too bad. But I really didn't like what I thought Bilic should have offered some sort of outball at least. I think at 3-0, he should have had some option on the counter. Either way, he just parked his entire team behind the box, and I think he missed a trick over there. Because we had our entire team committing forward. All he needed to do was a couple of players to just play on the break, at least stretch us on the other side. So that worries me about Bilic because that shows me he doesn't have faith in his own team. That sort of
Yeah,
indicates that, like, I've got a 3-0 lead, now I must protect it rather than look to build on it, look to counter on it. It just shows to me a manager who's not confident of his own attacking options.
fair, fair. My thinking with West Brom is I think they're a better team than their stats showcase, at least in attack. Because I thought even I saw the game against Everton as well, and until the time they got a red card, they were competing with Everton. They were causing them more issues. In fact, I'd go as far as saying that they were looking the slightly better team against Everton in that first period of play as well. So they do have a bit of spark, and that's primarily coming from the fact that both their wingers, Pereira and Diangana, are Premier League quality players who are showing good quality on the ball and they're capable of creating these chances. So if at all you are, I expect them to become better in attack. I mean, they've shown a fair bit of promise in attack. Defensively, I wouldn't go anywhere near the team. I agree with you guys, but I don't mind a punt when it comes to Tiangana or Pereira, given that they have decent fixtures in the next four. Uh, they will do better than their statistics have shown
I mean,
so far.
it's really a debate to be had between, let's say, a Diangana versus somebody from Leeds, a midfielder. Now, I would say somebody like a Diangana or Pereira will have a much higher goal involvement than, say,
Exactly.
a Klitsch or a Harrison, but they're going to score fewer goals.
Yep. That's the thinking. I don't even know if they score drastically fewer goals because they've shown some promise in attack, and both these players are good. I rate them, so I expect them to carry the attack for a few,
Yeah.
especially in the next four fixtures. Good, you mentioned Leeds because that's the team we're going to be talking about next. You start with Leeds off.
Yeah, Leeds have really impressed me, but the numbers statistically are not great. I think Bucker messaged them, mentioned it the last cast that they're really overachieving in terms of their numbers. So we have some expected goal involvement numbers here up for the players. Klitsch is up on top with his penalties, but you have Bamford in second with 0.76 xGI. That's really low. In terms of non-penalty, his xG is 0.68, which is again lower than Mitrovic. So it's all a question of whether you think they can sustain their chances. And what's unique about Bielsa is I think he improves his players more than any other managers. So you naturally see improve now. Maybe Bamford is just improved from last year. Maybe now he's a much better finisher. We don't know. But I definitely think in terms of value, they offer potential at all ends of the pitch.
Yeah, I actually wish they were a little better in defense because both Elling and Dallas look really good in
Yeah,
attack.
yeah. I think you
What happened?
mentioned last game, or sorry, you mentioned last game also. Like when Bamford scored, Ailing was right behind him.
Right, just the last game when Bamford had the chance, Ealing was behind him at the 88th minute. I love that attitude.
Yeah,
And Bielsa, I mean, what I saw with tactically what he did this time is he shifted the shape around and he had three centre backs because that's what he does. He likes having one more centre back than the amount of forwards the opposition has, so that he man marks all around the pitch. That's what he does.
precisely.
And if they were a little better in defense, I feel like Ealing and Dallas would be standout 4.5 options, but I just don't trust their defense at the moment. That said, I mean, I do like the look of Harrison in midfield. He seems like the prime creator, and I do like what I've seen of Bamford so far. I just don't want. I wonder whether it's a trap similar to what Pukki showed us last season. So I'm waiting for a few more weeks, judging them, and then I'll take a call. But yeah, I'm interested in both their assets. I just wish their defense improves because Ealing and Dallas look good.
Yep.
Dallas played midfield the last game. That's why he was so further up the pitch and he had a few good chances
Yep. He played a wing
this
back. He
last game.
almost scored. He had his shot cleared off the line.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But interestingly,
Bakar,
he's still below for that for XGI. He's actually marginally below Ailing. I guess that wasn't a very high XG chance because of the shot location.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, Bakar.
Yeah. So I mean, you know who Bamford reminds me of? He reminds me of Negredo for some reason. I mean,
No, don't say that.
I'm going to say that because I draw comparisons because 2 or 3 years ago when Middlesbrough were in the league, he had an early season bandwagon as well. He was a popular striker. He started. I remember studying their stats then as well, and he literally used to score from every single chance they get in the first 3 or 4 game weeks. And he was a very popular bandwagon who then fell away once Middlesbrough got found out. So I think this is going to be very similar to how the Bamford bandwagon is going to work out because he's literally taking every single chance he's getting these days, and I can't see that happening over the coming weeks. I mentioned last week as well at length at how clinical they've been. They're still in the bottom three for big chances, yet have scored 8 times now. Defensively, I agree with Late Riser when he says that they've been fortunate despite their recent clean sheet. They only West Brom actually have a worse expected goals conceded stat than them, and only West Brom have conceded more shots inside the box and big chances as well. Um, I mean, if I was looking for at one of their assets, I still think at some point maybe Dallas and Ailing will come good, but given their attacking potential, it's worth mentioning that Dallas was playing center mid this week, and he actually had a really good chance from an Ailing through ball, which had he converted would have gotten more attention. So I'm sure those two will become legit options for us at some point, but
I don't know. I don't know about that because Bielsa is your stubborn manager, and they play
He
such
won't
high
change.
football.
He won't
He
change.
won't change. So they'll continuously have the amount of gaps that they've had in defense, and he's going to be more punished than he was in the championship because they're playing better quality opposition. They're a legit good amount of teams, and I don't know how many clean sheets they're going to keep. So if
if
you're
if 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 this continues, then they'll keep on considering conceding big chances, and they won't get as lucky as they did this week. I mean, I know Meslier was on top form, but he won't be saving them every single time.
exactly. So it's worth watching. It's worth watching, and I think if at all you have to jump on Leeds, I think the first half of the season is the right time to jump on them because we've seen in the last 2 seasons of the championship that they tend to fall off
Especially around
post
Christmas.
around Christmas because it's so much energy, so much running, right? So the players obviously tire. So yeah, if at all you're jump early because they do have a tendency to drop off in the second half of the season. Nice segue into the hot fixtures. So we'll talk about Leeds first. What do you think is going to happen in the Man City Leeds game?
Open game, lots of goals, similar to the Liverpool one. I know, Guardiola is from the Bielsa School of Management. He regards him as his guru. So I think it's going to be the classic, the Padawan against the Jedi.
Who do you think is going to play striker for City again?
Probably Sterling.
All right. My thinking is that they'll be a lot better if he plays Foden as striker because Sterling is just so much better when he's running behind the defense. And I think Foden has a nice ability to link up play. He's good with his 1-2s. He's good with, you know, Sterling passing to him and giving one touch football. The other striker is selfish. So I hope Pep plays Foden as the striker with the other two making runs in field. But I do see goals in this game as well. It'd be interesting if Leeds score the first or the second goal because City defense don't really look rock solid at the moment, and Leeds will have a few chances. Leeds will cause a few trouble. I expect it to be. I wouldn't be surprised to see 5 or 6 goals in
Yeah.
this game.
Something like
I do.
4-1, 4-2, something like that is what I would expect.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if Leeds give City more trouble than we expect them to. What are your thoughts about that?
I think City will win, and I agree with the fact that City will get a lot of chances, particularly considering how Leeds play. I don't personally think that Leeds will score. I think City will keep a clean sheet, their first clean sheet of the season. Um, I expect it to be 3 or 4 nil to City personally.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I mean, if you really think about the Sheffield United game, uh, they had a huge bulk of chances, and this is a team that is 1/10 the distinct 1/10 the creativity of City. So yeah, I think
Exactly.
we'll talk about this more in detail when we're just talking about our captains. But another game that we are going to be talking about, Everton Brighton. I think it's a really interesting game. Two informed teams in the league right now who are both doing a lot better than they did previously. But I have a feeling on the day they'll cancel each other out, and I wouldn't be surprised to see something like a score draw, one or low scoring score draw. What are you thinking there, Bakar?
This is probably the hardest game to call this week. Personally, I really don't know which way it will go. I think it will be a 2-1 Everton win, but I won't be too confident about it um, because both these teams are in form and both of them are really posting good stats.
Yeah.
So it's the kind of game I'm going to have a tough time calling, considering that both attacks have been right up there for the relevant stats, XG, big chances, you name it, and both of them have done really well defensively as well. So I mean, they might cancel each other out. I mean, I agree. Even if someone is to win, I think Everton might just nick it by an odd goal.
Just something I'd like to point out to those that do own Lanty, now that we're talking about Brighton. I think he's a good person to play in any game except when Brighton are facing Liverpool or City, because he's capable of goals, assists, as well as clean sheets. So I think offers a lot of value for that 4.5, and don't hesitate to play him despite a difficult fixture, because Brighton are a much better team and he's capable of returns both ends.
Yep.
Do you think he's going to stay
Ba-
despite the
ba-
Oh yeah, there
the
was some Bayern
Bayern,
Munich.
Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
impressive.
I told you last week I won't be surprised to see him at City next season because he's showing. I mean, he looks really good. I just love watching him play. Uh, be sad that he if he leaves the league because he's such a great FPL asset.
But I'd be happy for the lad just to see him move,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
to like a top club like Bayern. Would be really,
sure,
really good for him.
for sure. Any thoughts on the game, Everton Brighton? How do you see that going?
It's very difficult to call because Brighton's stats are very difficult to read. Now they've conceded 6 goals from 8 shots on target. So, and we know Ryan's not a bad keeper. So what does that tell me? That tells me that are they giving up quality chances? What's happening there? It's also a little bit hard to read the performances because you look at the teams they played. You played Chelsea in game week 1, where we were a bit lucky to get away with the win. I thought Brighton were the better team there, but Chelsea, you could argue, obviously not an outfit that's running on all cylinders. You can't really evaluate Brighton clearly with that. Then they played, I think, Newcastle. Newcastle can be very Jekyll and Hyde on their day. You don't know how that's going to go. And they played against
But they absolutely battered. I think they've been the better team in all the 3 games that they played so far,
precisely.
right?
Precisely.
Yeah,
So, like, now this is really probably the test against a form team.
yeah.
So I think this game will really give us a clearer idea of how Brighton are going to be in terms of how the game will go. I think under 2.5 goals, but if it all depends on what they do with James. If they can manage to stifle James' creativity, they can keep the score down. If James has the freedom of the pitch, then it could be 2-3, whatever.
Fair. I think yeah, that is going to be the key point. United Spurs. How do you see that going?
Bore game. Usual Mourinho to the big teams, probably like your 1-1, 1-0, dull as a doorknob.
Yeah, same here. I wouldn't be surprised to. I'd be surprised to see more than 2 goals in this game. The hype of this game is a lot greater than the spectacle that it is going to be. What are your thoughts here, Makar?
I think I disagree with both of you. I think United will score 2 or 3 goals in this one. Spurs might nick one, but depends on whether Son is fit. But I can see United winning this
So
one.
that's
Uh,
interesting. You liked
I
you
don't.
thought Rashford. Sorry to interrupt. You thought Rashford away to Newcastle was a difficult fixture, but you think United can score 3 goals at home to
Spurs
Spurs.
away from home. Spurs away from home defensively have been a shambles for a while.
he's been
Uh,
watching a lot of Eric Dyer. I don't blame him.
Yes, any of you guys need to go for a poo. I won't follow behind. Don't worry.
so that's why I think. I mean, I've been noticing Spurs defensive stats away from home for a while. They don't look good at all. I mean, you look at them against Southampton. I watched that game, and in the first half, before Son scored, they got battered, and Southampton could have scored like thrice or four times even. So I mean, I think United will win this.
I hope you're right because I don't have confidence in United because the team that we saw last season, uh, we haven't uh, reached to those levels of sharpness yet. So I'll be a lot more confident when we reach those levels of sharpness. There were a few signs this game week, but I mean, we got battered by Brighton. And I think Brighton's a really good fixture. So I'm so happy that Son might not play this game because if Son was fit for this game, I wouldn't like our chances. And the last game, Liverpool versus Aston Villa, which is a nice segue into the captains. So let's sort of mix the two. What is your thinking there, Bakar?
I think it's going to be a comfortable Liverpool win. 2-0, I think. 2-0 to Liverpool. I know Aston Villa have looked good defensively, so it probably won't be 4 or 5, but Liverpool will still win comfortably. I
Just
mean,
to
I can see a good game for Salah Mane.
add to that, what are you thinking? What are your thoughts on captaincy? Leeds,
I don't own Salah,
Liverpool,
but
City,
then again,
Liverpool, City,
he's yet to
Liverpool, or
have a.
Wolves?
Sorry.
City, Liverpool, or Wolves? Wolves because they play Fulham.
City for me for sure. As I mentioned, I mean Leeds' stats defensively are poor, and I think Pep will want a reaction. So I mean that's the game where I can see City scoring 4 or 5.
So you got your armband on De Bruyne.
Yeah, at the moment, yes,
All right. You're considering bringing Sterling in, right? What's the thinking there?
yes, I am considering Sterling in
And
for it, and if I do, I will captain. So I mean, I'm my thinking there is that I just think that City will score so many goals that he's going to get a huge amount of chance. He's only 5% owned. So if I go there, that's what the reason will be. But I'm actually hoping that Pep actually plays him on the left because, like you said, I think he's a much better asset to own on the left. He doesn't really suit the false nine system.
agreed, agreed. Maybe for this game because he'll have a lot more space than he did in the previous one, because Leicester just parked, and that sort of defense doesn't suit Sterling as a false nine. Well, what are your thinking on the Liverpool game as well as the captaincy's off?
I mean, the Liverpool game seems to me under 2.5 goals. I think Villa have had a good start to the season. They'll probably be playing for a draw here. I think again 1-0, 2-0, feel quite comfortable. But I don't think this is a fixture really for captaincy. It's not a fixture. I don't think Villa. I don't feel comfortable captaining against Emi Martinez. He's such a good shot stopper. I think so. It's not one I'm looking at in terms of goals. Even Wolves Fulham is hard to call because we haven't seen that much from Wolves yet. It feels like a 2-0 Wolves win to me. The City game I think is going to be very very open, as we had discussed earlier. A lot of goals. KDB is currently my captain, but if I had Sterling, I'd probably captain him over KDB just because, like you said, the amount of space Sterling is likely to get this game because I think I can foresee a lot of breaks, a lot of counter attacks where KDB just plays a long through ball to Sterling. Sterling will square it across to whoever is in the center. So that's definitely the fixture for captaincy for me, without a doubt.
I agree with you. I own both KDB and Sterling, and I got Sterling over Salah specifically for these two games, keeping a strong eye on the Leeds game. So I captained Sterling last week as well. I expected Leicester to be a lot more open than they were. It didn't work out. I think I'm going to captain Sterling again this week because I think he's going to get a lot more space, and it's not so scary captaining a Sterling when you have a De Bruyne in your team as insurance. You're not going to be getting too affected by it. So yeah, 3 on 3. I mean, I think this is the first time in 5 pods that all three of us are aligned in terms of our captaincy picks. It's nice to see. Moving on to the three top stats for the game week. Take it over, Bakar.
Yeah, so I have three stats for you again this week. The first one is on the Brighton attack. Uh, as I mentioned earlier, I've been really impressed by Brighton. The numbers tell me that they've created 10 big chances. That they created 10 big chances in 9 games over the post restart period last season. But this season, they've already created 9 big chances in just 3 games. So they're creating on average like 3 big chances per game. And now they sit joint second best with Everton for big chances of all teams in the league. Um, I mean, consider the fact that they've played United and Chelsea in 2 of their first 3 fixtures, and that tells you how impressive their numbers are being. Just to put things into context, that's why I think Mope and even Trossard could be really good options this season. The second stat I have for you is on Sadio Mane. I think he's going a bit under the radar because of his ownership and because most of the people who play FPL seriously have Salah over Mane. But it's worth mentioning that no midfielder in the league has recorded more big chances than Mane this season, and in fact he's ranked third in the league for big chances of all players from open play. He's actually outstatting Salah 4-0 for big chances from open play. Salah hasn't yet had a big chance from open play this season, which is sort of worrying for his owners. But it's always an added incentive that he's on penalty, so it doesn't really take much for him to haul. The last stat I have for you is regarding the Burnley defense. Um, I know they've played only twice, and it's a small sample size, so take everything I say with a pinch of salt. Statistically, they're one of the most underperforming defenses in the league in their first 2 games. They've conceded twice, but they've conceded 5 times, but they've only conceded 2 big chances in these 5 games. I mean, if you look at the Leicester game, most of the goals they conceded were own goals or freakish goals, which shouldn't really have happened on any other day. I think they've actually, from the little what I've seen of them, they've actually done well to cope with the injuries with Tarkowski and me. So I think if either of these is back there, you're going to see plenty of clean sheets for the Burnley defense in the coming weeks.
I like that. I was actually, I thought it was a bit of bad luck to get only 2 points from Taylor this game week. I owned him so close to scoring. I think McCarthy pulled off a great save. That would have been his first goal in, I think, 3 or 4 years. And I thought they were unfortunate not to keep a clean
He's
sheet.
such good value at 4.5.
Yep. That's why I thank you for suggesting. We'll talk about my team
Yep.
later.
Let's just go to that. In fact, let's before that we do the differentials.
All right.
So I'll just walk you guys through the differentials. LR has gone for Armstrong. I like that against West Brom. Safe pick. Bucker has gone for Semedo. And I've gone for somebody who I think is going to play up front against Palace, Tammy Abraham.
Nice. All three with interesting picks. Mope did come through for you last game week, and Wood was close to getting a brace. Dianga did well as well, but he wasn't involved in the goal. So I think nice little segment that's opening up here. Interesting to see what happens next game week.
Now we'll segue to the teams, and you're up first, Ella. Remember to list your teams for the benefit of your audio listeners.
All right. I'll just do a little bit of explaining as well, because this was my wildcard team, and we didn't speak about it on the last pod. So in keeper, I have Martinez. I thought he's the best 4.5 keeper option available, and I don't like spending too much in my keeper spot. I have him with Button, who's in there for luck, because I had him for 38 game weeks last season. Trent picks himself. For my second defender spot, I have Semedo. I actually had Reece James and Sykes, and then I had a conversation with Zoff and Walsh from FML FPL. Both suggested that they don't like them as long-term options. I'm kind of happy about that, because I already see that Reece James doesn't look very nailed, as he's always going to be knocking at the back of his door. So I have Semedo in defense. Haven't seen much from him yet, but I'm expecting good things. And I have Taylor, Lamptey, and Mitchell in defense. 2 4.5s, 1 5.5, and Trent. The reason I have such a safe defense is because I like having risky players and playing around in my attack. So I thought if I wanted to continue with that strategy, I need to have a steady defense that I don't want to change so much, which is why I went away from Reece James at the end. In my midfield, I have triple city midfield. I have De Bruyne, Sterling, and Foden, because I'm specifically targeting the Leicester and the Leeds fixtures. I'm going to be holding on to this for this game week and then see what to do after. Captaining Sterling, as you can see, I have Foden as my fourth midfielder. Again, I like his run of fixtures for the next 4 or 5. Monitoring to see what happens from an injury point of view in the next 4 or 5. Either way, if he's not playing, I'm happy to hold, because I have Lamptey playing in place of him, and we just spoke that I'm happy to play him in any game. Very happy with my strike force. I have Jimenez and Calvert-Lewin, and we spoke about Werner in length. At the moment, I'm inclined to give him a week or two more. If I switch, it'll probably be to Kane, Ings, or Charlison.
How much money do you have in the bank there?
I have zero point 0.8 in the bank. I kept zero point 0.8 in the bank in purpose because I saw that I needed to switch Sterling or Foden soon. I didn't have Mo Salah. That's one of the reasons why I'm not making a move this week because I think next week I want to prioritize getting Mo Salah back depending on how the City midfielders look this week. So I'm happy to wait.
Makes sense. Bakar, you're up next.
Yeah. So I have Emi Martinez in goal. Then there's Trent, Reece James. Reece James, I'm still confident he's going to do well because I still think with Ziyech not in the side, the creative he's the creative outlet in that team, and
he's the outlet to cross. He's not creative. His delivery was, I thought,
it's audio, just volume, not quality.
Not quality.
If Tammy Abraham could finish, I mean, he would have had a couple of assists. So I still believe in Reece James.
I just thought it was a case of throw a lot of shit on the wall. Some will stick.
See what sticks, exactly.
See what sticks, exactly. I think I don't know. I don't rate him for his attacking delivery. Anyway, go on. Sorry to interrupt.
So I'm still being stubborn on James, but I still rate him.
Yeah.
And then there's Saiss. I'm not exactly sure about Saiss actually. There are rumors that he might be dropped.
He was very poor. Very poor against West Ham.
The fans are calling for him to be dropped for Dendoncker. So I'm not sure whether he's gonna start or not. But anyways, he's starting in my lineup because the fixtures is really good. Wolves are the bookies' favorite for a clean sheet this week as well. So that's my back three. In midfield, I have De Bruyne, captain. I've already spoken about that. Then there's Podence. I'm not sure whether Podence is going to start, but he's in my lineup. And in case he doesn't play, then Justin can come in as a sub. I think Justin is a very good first sub to have this week. Other than that, I have James and Rashford in my midfield. I'm considering selling either both of them to fund Sterling captain in, or either just James to Foden. But I'm not exactly sure which route I'll go. My forwards are set. I won't change them this week. Werner's in there, Jimenez and Calvert-Lewin. So yeah, that's my team.
Yep.
Right.
Hopefully not.
I'm more inclined towards the Sterling move than the Foden move. If I was in your place, just thought
I think you're gonna get more jammy bench points this week.
The problem with the Sterling move is that if I get Sterling captain in, the move I do is Rashford out, James Rodriguez out for Sterling captain and Foden in. The problem with that is that would price me out of Robertson, and I really want Robertson soon in my team. So like yourself, I don't have Salah as well. So I need to take an additional hit to fund Robertson in. So that's the problem I might face.
Yeah. Fair.
I can even save my transfer. I'm not sure really which route I'll take.
All right. So before we jump to the next topic, I know LR, you had mentioned the benefits of saving a transfer previously with relating to COVID. I just wanted to point out it was a bit different last time because last time it was segued with the holidays. So now when the players are moving from the Premier League to the international team, they're still in that bio bubble thing. So I don't think that COVID risk is there as much as we think. But the obviously risk of injury. And this time they're playing 3 international games, not 2.
Wow. Okay. Fair.
So that is another aspect we have to consider. Now, my team, I'll just walk you guys through really quick. I've got McCarthy in goal, who's a hero. Alexander-Arnold, Justin, Walker-Peters, also a hero. Salah, De Bruyne, Havertz, Rodriguez, Mitrovic. Werner has made way for Calvert-Lewin and Adams. So I've got about 3 million in the bank. I'm probably going to be doing Mitrovic to Jimenez for a hit on Friday if there's no other injuries or anything else.
I like that hit a lot. I see it paying off.
Over the next 4 weeks, I think it should, because Mitrovic, I really don't know. Because the thing is with Mitrovic, right, the next 2 games, he plays Wolves and Sheffield United. Now, these are A, 2 good, strong defensive teams, and B, teams who play with 3 at the back. Now, I feel that teams that play 3 at the back against a single striker, like a Fulham, so they can really crowd the centre back. They can stop the crosses coming in. And he only relies on crosses, as we saw previous game. They're just throwing crosses into the box. So I think Mitrovic's supply line is going to be cut out over the next 2.
Mitrovic has no supply line. The team is crap. They don't create chances. Never rated their attack.
I really like that hit as well. I think it's a very safe hit to take.
Yeah, you know me, I wouldn't be taking hits otherwise. If I'm considering a hit, I have to be pretty confident about it.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Q&A.
Move on. Q&A. I'll start reading them out one by one. The first question is from @KJFPL. Could you compare a great player not on pens like Tony to an okay player on pens like Mope? Is it worth playing 8-9 million for players not on pens? Bakar, take this one.
Yeah, I've kind of answered this a bit earlier in the podcast as well. I'll just repeat myself. With the reports coming in that Premier League referees will be asked to show leniency for the handball decisions, I think we might see a slight decline in the rate of penalties that we've witnessed so far. Personally, I don't mind paying a premium for non-penalty takers. There are players like Calvert-Lewin, Mahrez, Sterling. They're all really good options without penalties. And even when, for example, Martial clicks, I think he's going to be a really good option as well. So I don't really mind paying 8 or 9 million for him.
I hope you're right because we don't want fantasy Premier League turning into fantasy penalty league. I mean that's just
Yeah, that would just be boring.
terrible for the game and it takes away eye test and what we're doing here, etc., etc. We hate it. Next question is from, I love the name, FPL Pahalwan. For those that don't know Hindi, Pahalwan means bodybuilder. Love that name. It's Zoff, take this one. Is penalty taker a must other than Salah, KDB, and Bruno, of course? Should we ignore the template given what has happened in the first 3 game weeks?
I mean, let's deal with each question. Let's look at the template. I don't think there is a template yet, is it? I mean, there's so many options this year. There's no real template, so that question really doesn't need answering. In terms of penalty takers, also, I think we've touched upon it earlier. If a player is good and he takes penalties, you can consider him, but that doesn't necessarily make somebody like Callum Wilson, who's going to have 2 shots on target in 3 games, a good pick just because he's on penalties.
Yep, agreed. You need to differentiate between the quality of the players as well. Next question is from Bhavik. I think he listens in regularly. Thank you, Bhavik. @ BK Bash 2011. Ta and Robo double up worth consideration. Looking at Liverpool fixtures, I mentioned it last pod as well. It's a good pick this season, especially with Thiago coming into play. The pool looked good, and I just like to quote a stat from our friend Adam Hopcroft here. He posted something on his Twitter. Uh, in the last 11 games since Project Restart, Robertson's stats are played 11, 2 goals, 6 assists, and 3 clean sheets. I mean, that's getting more than your money's worth for a 7 million asset. So definitely, I think the double up is good. But it also depends on your playstyle as a manager. Right now, I'm not going there because I know that I'm happier with an attacking double up and I'm happier going cheap in defense. It could change, my opinion could change. So it depends on your playstyle as an FPL manager as well. Next question is from Logan @SLRHJK. Simple one, Bucker. Jimenez or Rings?
This is a really tough call. Um, Both are on penalties, both in form, and both have more or less the same price. So it's a hard one to call. I'd personally go with him, and as I think his fixtures over the next 4 are better than that of Ings. Um, I mentioned the fact that Ings has Chelsea away with a better keeper. That might be tough. Everton, really good defensive stats. Then Villa away, who've looked solid as well. Ings will, with his finishing, I'm sure he's a class player. He's going to score 1 or 2 goals despite his fixtures, but I just don't think his ceiling is as high as Jimenez's. So I personally prefer Jimenez.
All right. I agree.
I
Next
agree.
one is from Chips and Chops @Chipless Chaps. Zoff, take this one. Should we be worried about Wolves' assets after the horror show against West Ham? New signing system could take some time to come into fruition. What is your thinking there?
I don't think there's any reason to be worried at all because I really rate Nuno as a manager. I'm expecting them to show a reaction.
And they're playing Fulham, who are the worst team in the
I'm
league.
just Fulham, Leeds, and Newcastle. I don't think you could have cherry picked better 3 fixtures. Maybe throw in West Brom in there.
All right. Next question is from @FPL Overthinker. I'll take this one. My team is very heavy on 4 teams: Everton, Chelsea, Liverpool, and Wolves. Do you think I should be looking to spread the risk? I know you advocate double ups and triple ups, but more than 3 doubles in the same team, nothing wrong with it. We touched on it earlier as well. You need to look at all your picks in isolation. And I mean, the double ups and triple ups that you have right now are sounding very good to me. Everton, form team. Liverpool looking like the best team in the league. Wolves have the best 3 fixtures that we spoke about. The only double up, triple up I'd worry about at the moment is Chelsea because they haven't gelled yet, as we spoke about. So maybe just get rid of one Chelsea player if you want to spread the risk. The other 3 double up, triple ups look good to me. Next question is from Jose Macedo @ZZ Macedo. Hi guys, Foden versus Trossard. Bakar, will you take this one?
I think I'd go with Foden, particularly if he gets rested tonight. I think Trossard is someone who I like, and he has. I know he was man of the match against United. He delivered a very classy performance over there, but he's someone who always strikes me as the kind of player who blows a bit hot and cold. And I honestly, I don't think I can trust Potter with his selections because he always seems to be the kind of manager who seems to tinker with his team after one bad performance. He's a bit random with his team selections. I mean, you can
Not
argue.
this season though. I mean, this
I mean,
season.
this season because they've been playing really well, so he hasn't been made or forced to change something. I mean, you can argue the same for Pep as well because Pep rotates a lot as well. But I personally think that the City attack has such higher upside that I would still pick Foden over Trossard.
I
I don't
agree.
know.
I agree.
Next question is for Zoff. It's from at the rate FPL Euphoria. For those who kept their wild card, when is the best time to use it? Zoff, you haven't used your wild card yet, so what's your thinking?
I haven't really decided when I want to use it. I think the latest you can use it this year is game week 16. I really don't like the fact that you have to use your wild card in the first half of the season. I'm more of a purist where you could keep it for as long as you need to. So it's very you really can't overstate the importance of a wild card. Like it's literally the team. If you play according to the double game week strategy, this is large core of your team that's going to be with you up till game week 30 odd. That's a lot of time. So I would say it depends largely on your team, how far you are away from the players you want. So an exercise I often do is when I think about it, I make a wildcard draft. I see which players I want, see how far away I am from it, and I look at it and I think myself, could this change next week? Could I possibly want different players next week? Once you're confident that no, I want these players next week also, I think that's when you can be confident about pushing the wildcard button. Do we have that information yet? I don't think so.
All right. Next question is from Matt Clark at the rate Matthew WPJ Clark. What to do with Harry Kane? I've owned since game week 1, but thinking of switching to Jimenez and using the money to upgrade Rashford to Sterling slash Mane. However, with penalties playing such a big part at the moment, I'm inclined to keep him, particularly since Spurs have a good run soon. I don't mind the idea of keeping Kane at all. I told you he's a striker. I'm looking to get him. If there is I do like the Rashford to Sterling upgrade, especially this week because I think Sterling is a standout captaincy option this week. So if you could find another route to Sterling, uh, go for it. And if you can't find any route, do it, but know that it can backfire. Like this is the kind of move that can net plus 20 or minus 20. It depends on the risk appetite. I would do it if I have the feeling and the inkling, the gut. Uh, Next question is from at the rate the feeds. Benefits of patience versus proactivity. Patience for information, COVID test, injury, proactivity for team value not being priced out of players. Bakar, you take this one?
I mean, there's a fine balance between gathering information and being able to build team value. Personally, I like being aggressive early on in the season, where I like making early transfers to accumulate my team value. But I feel as if my approach is totally different in the second half of the season, where I don't think team value comes into play as much. Um, so yeah, I'm all for making early transfers early on, particularly if you have a wild card in hand, then it kind of makes more sense.
All right. The only thing I'd add to it is if there are midweek games, then try waiting for 2 3 days if you're not priced out of the move. If there are no midweek games left, then feel free to make them. That's
There's
the
an
only thing.
additional
Anything?
variable this year in terms of the COVID test. You
Yeah.
have these players
Yeah.
randomly testing for COVID. We saw Thiago. He played against Chelsea. Then he got. So that's another variable you have to consider. I say, where possible, if you can still afford the player by the, let's say, the end of the week, don't worry about point one, point two, because I think there's just so many options this year. If you can't afford one player, you can always look at option B. So I don't.
All right.
Think this year is a bit different in that aspect.
All right. Next one again is from a regular listener, FPL Kaza. Bakar, take this one. Which defenses would you invest in if you were wildcarding today?
I think I would go with Darryl Liverpool for sure. We haven't talked about this yet on this episode, but Trent and Robertson they look really good from this week onwards. Robertson, when I look at his stats, I mean, only Robertson and Trent have more than 100 touches in the final third for defenders, and like Robertson has like a ludicrous amount of touches, like 143. Trent is on 107, and the third best is Dini on 87. So that just tells you how attacking the two Liverpool fullbacks are. So I would definitely pick them. I still think Reece James will be a good asset to own. I would still go with him on wildcard. There's Lamptey I like as well, but he's flirting with the move to Bayern, so I'm not really sure about that. If you want to be more safe, then Taylor might be an able deputy.
No Wolves. They
I am not exactly sure about Wolves because as Saiz, I'm not sure will keep his place. Their numbers defensively have plummeted. I know the fixtures are really good, but I'm not exactly sure. If I was picking one, I would go with Semedo.
all right. Nice.
Yeah.
Yes. Next question is from our friend Zoff. It's from at the rate FPL Sid. Uh, what's a good start, Zoff? Who are the mid-price players being ignored?
First of all, hello Sid. I think a good start is anything inside the first million. At the gym the other day, somebody walked up to me and said that like, dude, I saw your team. You had ranked 800k. You've had such a bad start, and I was just shaking my head. That like, okay, man, dude, like another 20 points would put you in the top 100k. So it's just one captaincy pick from now to get into the top 100k. So I think anything inside the 1 million is a good start. In terms of mid-price players being ignored, I don't think there is any single player in the fantasy landscape who isn't covered today by the information we have on Twitter and all these websites that cover FPL. There's no real player that is being ignored. As soon as a player shows any glimpses of potential, you see him on the scout page on Twitter. So there's really no player that's going under the radar, in my opinion.
All right. Yeah, I mean, 800k is a great start. I'm at 4.8 million right now, and I'm not really too worried. Yeah, I've had a bad start, but I'm not reading too much into this start because we've had a fair amount of variance. The next question is from Baker343, Baker FPL 343. Follow him. He's also started a podcast called the Above Average Podcast, which I listened to a couple of episodes. They're pretty decent, so give it a go. His question is, be good to hear your thoughts as a United fan on their start and their assets. I think this is something we've seen with City as well as United. They were a little behind everybody else in terms of preseason, and I think I'd give it one or two games before we start hitting the levels that we saw post restart when it came to United. We're a good team. We've seen consistent enough proof of that. We've played well on a fairly consistent level since the time Bruno has joined us in January. So I wouldn't be too worried. Bruno already paid faith this season. Even though we're not creating a bulk of chances, our players are still fairly clinical. So if they do get the chances, they will bury them. And we saw more signs of clinicality this week than we did last week, and I think that's only going to improve week on week. So I wouldn't panic too much.
Yeah.
Next question is from Ankit Rahate 14. This is for Zoff. He's asking you specifically, do you think there is a midfielder below 7.5 or a forward below 7.5 that can outscore Tao or Robertson this season? How viable does a 4-4-2 with both of them for the entire season look for you?
I think there's a different approach I take in the second half and the first half. And generally, I notice there are fewer clean sheets in the first half of the season, but it doesn't look like Robertson needs clean sheets at the moment to accumulate points. If I was wildcarding, I'd definitely double up on TA and Robbo because Liverpool seem to me the only team that are consistent from last season. They really
Fair.
look like they're unstoppable. And in terms of value for money, I think Robertson is one of the best assets in the game.
I
So,
agree.
in terms of the strikers who can outscore him, you might say DCL. I see potential probably in DCL to outscore him, but in midfield, maybe James. I know James is around 7.7 now, so slightly ahead of that. So I definitely think Robertson is a great pick. And in terms of the 4-4-2, I think that is also a viable option because you have the likes of Dean, Coleman, who are providing outstanding value. And I would argue somebody like Dean at 6.1 offers more than any mid-price midfielder in that bracket.
The only thing I'd like to add here is when you're comparing a 7.5 defender, you don't necessarily compare it to a 7.5 midfielder because the base price for defenders is lower than the base price for midfielders. So you're always going to have the comparison you should make in your head is a dual comparison. So if I'm getting Robertson instead of a 5.5 defender, what am I compromising on an attack and then try making the decision? That's the only thing I'd like to add. And I saw an interesting thread on FPL from FPL Puka where he's basically saying that we are going to see a higher number of penalties this season. Uh, Also means a higher number of random clean sheets getting destroyed. So just something that you need to add to your thinking as well.
There's one more
Next,
side to this argument. Sorry to interrupt you. Now, it's
yeah,
also now the
sure,
question of 4.5 defenders. Now,
yeah,
do 4.5 midfielders offer you anything? Do 4.5 strikers offer you anything? Nothing.
nothing
So, in terms
exactly.
of actual getting most bang for the buck, you're getting that in defense. So that is a counter argument to the Robertson point of the 4-4-2. Ultimately, if you're
Yeah.
looking to squeeze out bang for your buck, you're going to get that in defense.
Exactly.
So there are both sides of the argument there.
Yeah. And I think both strategies are legit. I have
It
no.
depends on your playing style. Again, you have to be very patient with the likes of Trent Rob. I remember last year, I think the first 10, 11 weeks, when we had Adrian instead of Allison in goal, I think they kept only 2 or 3 clean sheets. So you have to be patient with that approach.
All right, Bakar, this one is an add-on to the question previously asked you as well. Which would you prefer for the from the following for the next 3-4 game weeks? Harvey Barnes, Foden, Trossard.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that I prefer Foden over Trossard. If I was picking one of Trossard or Barnes, I would go with Barnes. I think Leicester's fixtures swing it for me.
All right, nice. The next question is a DCL versus Richarlison question. I think we've already covered this in depth,
In depth.
so we'll skip this for now. And that's the end of our pod. Anything you guys want to add? You think that we missed out on?
No?
I just like to thank the listeners and viewers for listening in. I've been receiving a tremendous amount of feedback, and I just like to thank the people for their support.
Yeah, I mean 5K subs on episode 5. Really happy. So yeah, the support's been great, and hoping we don't see any tech difficulties again this
We had
game
some
week.
audio issues. I didn't want to interrupt you guys. We had some audio crackling. I think it's because of bad internet. So I apologize for that in advance.
All right. Hopefully, India's internet holds up the next pod. On that, just to a little update, we won't be podding next Tuesday or Wednesday because there's an international break. So we'll be podding on the Tuesday before the next game week. So just something that you should watch out for. And as usual, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like button when we're sharing the links to the pods on Twitter and Instagram. Please share them because it really helps us and encourages us. And I'll definitely see you next pod with the green arrow because it's due.
Green arrows for all of us, hopefully. See
All
you
right.
guys. Good night.
See you guys. Cheers.
Good luck.
Bye.
Bye-bye.